everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be building a Next.js project from scratch. I'm going to be going through every single concept in Next.js that we have. So basically currently Next.js is on the version 15th. I have pulled up Next.js documentation and I'm going to be opening installation section, and here we can see in order to install a Next.js app we need to run this command, which is pretty much easy. So if you come from React background, this is not going to be very hard, to be honest. Okay, now let me pull up a terminal and paste this command in the terminal. Alright, now it's going to ask us a couple of questions. First of all, what is the name that we want to set for our project? So we are going to be building a to-do app, so I'm going to name it like my to-dos. Would you like to have TypeScript? So basically it's an option, so you can opt for TypeScript as well, but currently I'm not going to go with TypeScript, so I'm going to go for no. Would you like to use ESLint? For now I'm gonna go for no. Would you like to use Tailwind CSS? So I would like to use Tailwind CSS because it would make the styling a little bit easy, so I'm going to say yes. And now it's another thing that it asks that would you like to code inside source directory or not, because it's not like mandatory in Next.js that you have to code inside source directory as we do in React. So basically I'm gonna go for no. Would you like to use app router? Yes, of course. And would you like to use TurboPack? So TurboPack is basically Next.js's own compiler. It makes things a little faster, but I'm gonna go for no for now. And would you like to have customized the import aliases? So basically we can have, like, if we say yes to it, so we can have those absolute imports from the top, so we don't need to import the components using relative paths. So I'm going to say yes to this. So basically by default the alias is @, but you can have like your own would be @ your name or your project's name, whatever it could be. For now I'm just going to say enter, and it's going to take some time. So it's going to be building our project on the basis of all the configuration that we have selected. Let's wait for the process to be completed. Alright, so it is done basically, and it has created an app inside my directory. I'm going to cd into that folder, which is my to-dos. Alright, and I'm going to open this app. I'm going to open this in VS Code. So basically I have, okay, so the app looks something like this. The one thing to notice is that it has already like installed and set up Tailwind CSS for us, so we don't need to do anything here. Other than that, we can see, if we go to package.json, then we can see that it uses React's 19 version, which is not even currently like officially released. So the React 19 version is on RC version, so it is kind of like an advantage for the Next.js 15 is already released, but the React version it uses, which is 19th version, is not officially released. Okay, so basically now in order to run the app, basically we have the command next.dev. Alright, but in order to run it we can use npm run dev. So I'm going to pull up the terminal once again and run the command npm run dev, press enter, and as you can see that the server has started on the localhost 3000. Now as you can see, our default Next app is running on localhost 3000, so we can start writing the code for the app. Okay, so I am going to begin with app folder, and inside app folder we have this page.js. so this is basically the first file where it begins and we start writing the code. So what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to remove all of this code which is already pre-written, and I will write something on my own. So for example, for now I'll write a div and say like home page. Okay, and let me remove this image as well, and let me save it. Okay, so initially I want to talk a little bit about server components and client-side components. So in Next.js, by default, every component is a server component if we don't say otherwise. So basically now this home page, this component is a server component, so this component will be fetched from the server and won't be there in the client side build. But if we technically want this component to be a client side component, so that we need to mention a directive on the top which is use client. So if I write use client on the top, then this component became client side component. And just to verify that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to console a value. Let's say console test, and wait, let me save this. Okay, so I have saved it now. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect it and I'm going to see the console, and we can see that this test is printed in the console on the client side browser. Okay, so which means that now this is a client component. But let's say if I remove this use client, okay, if I don't use this, now this component is going to be a server side component. So let me remove this and save this. All right, and see, now if I refresh, we can see that this test is printed in the browser console anyways, but we have a tag which is this server, which means that this is from the server. And also at the same time we can open our console. Okay, so here we can see test is printed on our console here as well on the terminal, so which means that this is printed on the server side. So basically, which proves that this component is now a server side component. So on the basis of our needs and requirements, we can make the components client side or server side depending upon what our requirement is. Now in the Next.js documentation, it is properly mentioned then in what cases you should be using a client side component and what cases you should be using a server side component. So basically it is suggested that if we have to fetch a very heavy data from the backend side from the server, in that case it is recommended that we use a server component. But if we have a component which has more of interactivity from the user, a lot of clicks, a lot of changes, so in that scenario we have to prefer a client side component. So it depends upon the needs, we can switch from a client to a server side component. All right, now I am going to talk a little bit about routing. So routing in Next.js is file-based routing, so that we are already aware about, so we don't need to specifically define a router. By default, the route inside the app folder will decide the route of that component here. So alright, so basically inside page.js, which is directly inside app directory, this is going to show in /route. But if we create another folder or another file inside it, so name of that file will define the name of the route of that component. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to do some changes in layout file. So layout file, what basically we have in Next.js, any folder can have layout file or page.js file. Page.js file act as index file which actually renders, but the layout file act as a wrapper to that component. So for example, if we want to attach some kind of header, sidebar, navigation bar, or any default styles to that component, so that we can do in layout.js. and this component by default gives us a children prop, and we can pass that children prop inside of whatever our JSX is and put it right inside there, and then this children is basically what we write inside page.js, and it is rendered by default. Alright, so I'm going to make some changes in the layout.js, because I want my some different styles. And so basically this current font is something that I don't need. So what I'm going to do is, I also want to tell is that we also have this function in Next.js which is local font, and we can put the font file inside the fonts directory, and then we can import those fonts like this, and then pass those fonts as inside class name inside the body tag. So now basically this font is going to be available globally in every single file, because this is very top layout. So this is going to be implemented for every single component or file inside the app directory. Alright, so but I don't want this font, so what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to remove this code and remove this as well. I'm going to delete this fonts folder as well for now. Alright, so this is deleted, and let me okay, what I'm going to do is now I'm going to remove every class name from body because I don't need it. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a header tag inside HTML. Okay, sorry, not header, head tag. Okay, and inside this I'm going to put some scripts. So by default, I think the recommended way of importing fonts is only you put it inside fonts directory, so that is recommended. But for now I'm just going to copy, you know, some of the links from Google Fonts and just put it right inside the head tag like this. So I'm using this font called Lato. Alright, so I have imported all those links, so we can just directly copy these links from the Google Fonts website. So I'm just going to do it this way. Alright, so let me format and save it. Alright, so now I'm using those fonts, but in order to implement it properly, what we have to do is we have to go inside the CSS file, which is this globals.css file. Alright, and we have to make some changes. So basically what I'm going to do is I am going to apply that font to every single tag or every single thing on the platform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this, the star, and the font family is Roboto. Okay, alright, the font which is basically I'm using is Roboto condensed, and this is by default, this is what I've copied from Google Font website. Alright, so now I am going to make a couple of changes. I am going to remove this font family, I don't need this. Alright, so I think everything else seems fine, but one more thing I want to do is, like, I want to have a primary color for my app. So I think that I want something like greenish color. So I'm going to apply, have a color primary which I want there to be there on like my application. It's the hashtag 07CBAE. Alright, so this is the color. Alright, so I have defined it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create two quick classes. So those classes are basically color primary and background primary. So for any text or any card or anything, if I want to implement the primary color, I'm just going to use the C primary or background primary class. Alright, so I'm going to save it for now, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a new folder inside app directory, which is going to be to-dos. Okay, to-dos folder. So now if you see, we have a to-dos folder inside app, and then I'm going to create the component file which needs to be page.js as per next 15 conventions. So basically now if you see, it is a file based routing, right? Now what is the route of this page file is going to be /todos. Alright, so now I'm going to start writing the code inside page.js. Alright, I'm going to write like, firstly I'm going to create this component. I'm going to name it homepage. Alright, I'm going to name it homepage, and as we know that the route this file will take is /todos, so I'm going to write /todos like this, and you saw that homepage is visible here. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a layout for this file. So as we know that we can create a layout file right inside that folder only. Okay, again I am going to give this component name as home page layout. Alright, so it's going to give me a prop name children, and whatever I do here for the styling purpose, I have to export the children like this. Alright, now I am going to do some kind of styling here. So basically let me get those back. Now I'm going to give few class names to this div. So firstly, I want background to be primary. Okay, this is a class that I just created in global.css. Now I want the height to be screen. Okay, so height screen means a full screen height in Tailwind, and then I want it to be like a grid. I want to place the items center. Alright, that would be for the wrapper. Now I want to create like another div inside it, so let me just remove the children for now, and I'm going to create another div. So this div I want something like to be a card, so I want the background to be white. Okay, and then I want the height to be auto. I want rounded to be large, and I want some kind of box shadow, some medium box shadow. I want padding of 6. So if you guys have noticed, these classes are by default automatically suggesting to me because I have installed Tailwind extension. So if you have Tailwind installed in your project, so I also would recommend you to install the Tailwind extension as well. So it will be really helpful. It will suggest all the classes to you by default, so you don't have to remember all of those classes by default. The other thing that I want to do is make the text center. Make the text center. Then I want it to be like flex column. Oh god, flex column. And what else? I think I also want like items to be center. Alright, now basically I want to give it a width. So basically width I want to give it like if we make this bracket, we can also put like dynamic classes inside it. So I want like the width to be minimum of 600 pixels or 90 view width, so it will be like mobile responsive as well. And the in case of height, I want a minimum height of 500 pixels all the time. So I want minimum height of, in the bracket I'm gonna just mention 500 pixels. Alright, so I have okay, now I've created this div, and inside this div I think I can put the children directly. Alright, so basically this became the layout. I wanted the background to be primary, and this card basically will have all the list of my to-dos. Okay, I think that was for the layout part, and now what I'm going to do is I am going to go to the page and the actual content of this file. I'll write here. So basically, firstly I'm gonna work a little bit on styling only. So I'm going to create a div, and the first thing I want it to have width full. Okay, and then I'm going to have like a h1 tag, and h1 tag should say like my to-dos. Okay, and I'm going to give some class names to this h1. So class names can be like text3xl. okay, this needs to be small case, text3xl, and margin bottom 4 probably, and I want the font to be like extra bold. Okay, now what I'm going to do is like create a variable like to-dos, because I am going to be writing server functions to fetch the to-dos later. But for now I'm just going to write like an empty variable to-dos. So one thing to remember is that we can, even if we are using a client-side component, we can fetch the values of that component from a server-side function as well. So we can like combine those two. So it's very flexible, and however we want to use, we can do. Okay, now I'm just basically going to write the code for like if we don't have any to-dos, like in the case when we don't have any to-dos, when we don't have any length to the to-dos, then I want a div again, and I want to make it like really small, so I give 96, and I want it to be a grid. I want to again place items center, and inside this div I want to have like a h2 tag, and I will say no to-dos created. Now this h2 tag can also have some text classes, could be a large text, and I can have like text gray 500 probably, and I want its opacity to be 50 because I don't want to highlight it, and I want a margin bottom to be 4. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, after that I'm going to create a button, and I'm going to have button like create to do. Alright, so let me, okay, I haven't made an else condition for that. In the else I'm going to show null. Okay, alright, so basically it needs to be extra bold. I'm sorry, let me save it. Alright, so now as we can see that no to do is created, and we have a button called create to do which doesn't do anything for now. Okay, probably what I want to do is I want to have like a constant styling for my buttons in the app, so I don't want to like apply stylings to every single button on the app. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a default styling for button in the global.css. so I want a couple of stylings here. So what I'm going to do is, every single button will have background primary, color white, and this particular height font size. So let me save it, and something like this. So every single button will be our primary button, so we don't need to define or add any class names to it later on. Okay, so that's probably done. So next step is going to be actually like creating server functions to fetch the to-dos. So what I'm going to do is, now I am going to create server functions to fetch the to-dos, but one thing you might have noticed is I haven't write any use client in here. It's because in this component I want to fetch the details from the server, right? So when we have to fetch heavy data from server, although this is not going to be heavy data, but still if it is recommended that when we are fetching something from the server, so it's a good idea to make that component a server component, which will make it closer to the source of data. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, my target is to fetch the list of to-dos. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder in the root of the app. I can name it data because inside it I want to fetch the data particularly. So inside it I will create server functions. So the first function that I'm going to create would be like get to dos .js. Okay, so here on the top I'm going to write use server. One thing I would like to mention is that inside the server functions we can literally write any server code that we want. So basically exactly something that we do on a Node.js application or an Express.js application, we can connect to the database, we can retrieve data from the database or anything like that. We any action which we normally do on a backend side of code we can do here, so there are no restrictions, so we can do that. Because this code runs on the server side, I'm going to create a function named get to dos, and it's going to be an async function, and I'm going to run some logic inside it. But firstly I'm going to export this function by default as get to dos. Alright, so what basically I'm going to do here is I need a way to store the data somewhere, which I can retrieve with this function. So basically what I'm going to do, inside it I'm going to use cookie storage. So now what I'm going to do is firstly I'm going to import cookies. So cookies we can import from Next headers. One thing to know is with the latest version of Next.js, now cookies also provide like a promise, so we can async and await the storage here. So that's why I'm going to use cookies, but literally we can use anything in here. We can connect to any kind of database, whether it's MongoDB, MySQL, or anything that you're comfortable with. So basically we can do anything. For keeping this project simple, I'm going to use cookies, but it could be literally anything. Now I'm going to create a variable which will be like cookies promise. Okay, I'm going to await the cookies, because as I said that now it returns promise. Okay, so basically I'm going to store it in a variable named to-dos, and it would be like cookies promise dot get. I'm going to get a variable name from cookies, which I'm going to again name to-dos, so which I'll take care of later, but for now I'm going to do that. So I also want to see that what is stored in the to-dos, so I will just console it as well. Now what it does is basically how cookies stores the data. It basically stores the data in an object. It has like a path, and then it has a value property. So it basically stores the value in value property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to return to-dos dot value. Like if there is a value, then I want to return to-dos dot value, otherwise I want to return like a empty array. Alright, let me save it. Now one thing to notice is let me go back to like my app, and then this page inside it. So now basically, as we already know that this component is a server component, right? So server component, in server component we can make the components as async. So whenever we make the component as async, so they basically firstly fetch all the async and do all the async operations, fetch all the data, and then afterwards render the component is rendered on the screen. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to call that function get to-dos, so which is imported from data / get to-dos, and now I can await it here. So basically I can use this await keyword here like directly inside this component, only because this component is a server component. If it was a client-side component, I wouldn't be able to make it async or await like this. Alright, so I'm going to await it, and we don't even have to like take care of when it's going to be completed and anything like that. So it's going to take care of that on its own. When to-dos are fetched, they are going to be rendered on the screen. Alright, so let me save it firstly and refresh this. Now nothing really happened, but one thing I want to do is I want to go to the layout of this. Now layout, I'm like directly rendering the children. Now I know for a fact that the children is like a server component, correct? So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show some kind of loading or something like that, until that API call is getting made in the children. So basically I'm going to use the suspense from React. So I'm sure you're aware about suspense. Alright, so basically we can use async components like server components as like children to it, children. So now I have to pass a fallback. So I'm not gonna pass something like very complex. I'm just going to pass like a p tag of like loading. Okay, like that. So let me save it now. Okay, so let me refresh this. Okay, so it basically, what is happening, it's because right now the cookie storage in local, like it's really quick and really fast, so we didn't have to wait for even like a millisecond or something, and the call is finished, so we are not really able to see the loading. But I can also like show you the loading by making a set timeout or something like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to like a fake return a promise. So I'm going to return a promise, and it will have like resolve, and inside it I want to like have a set timeout of let's say 2 seconds, and inside this I want to resolve this value, and I'm going to copy this thing and paste it here. So I'm going to resolve this, and let me refresh it, and let me save it. So after saving it, let me refresh this now. So see, now we can see loading there for some time, for 2 seconds, and then actually the UI got rendered. So now what happened is basically I have used suspense, so which the fallback is loading. So it knows that the children is like an async component, it's a server component, so it's going to wait for all the async operations inside the children component to be finished, and until then it's going to show the loading state, and only after that it will show the children. Okay, so this is kind of like the benefit of server components. But if it was a client-side component, we wouldn't be able to do something like that. We'll have to like create a use effect, and inside the use effect make a call to the fetch the to-dos and store the state of to-dos and do all of that inside the client-side component. The one drawback of server components is that we cannot use hooks like use effect, use state, we cannot do that. The second thing is that we cannot use clicks, so we cannot have like on click or something like that. So that is the another thing, because the server components cannot have interactivity. Okay, so now that's done. So now what I'm going to do is I think I want you guys to know one more thing, is that in the layout file, we can also return the metadata. So basically Next.js has made the search engine optimization incredibly simple and efficient, so it's like very easy to use. So now earlier what we used to do for the search engine optimization, we used to like download install libraries like React Helmet and like that, right? But now for any component or like any layout, we can return the metadata. So basically for now, as we know that here we are on the route to do, so for this route we want to have like a metadata, we want to have that page to have a title and a logo or anything like that. So we can like we don't have to do anything, we can just export the metadata, okay, like that. So okay, I think let me remove it, and it needs to be a variable, and here we can pass the title as my to-dos. So it doesn't mean that it has to be something static. For example, it's a product page and every product has a unique name. Alright, so for example, this is like a calculator, so we can fetch the data from database like dynamically and name the title as that calculator. It could be literally dependent upon that specific page, so it could be dynamic as well, but for now I'm showing you the static title, which is my to-do. So I'm basically like going to save this, and let me refresh this, and you can see here the title of this is like my to-do. So similarly like that, we can have all kind of links and icons and whatever we want in here, whatever we used to do for the search engine optimization. So basically we can do that. Okay, now what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to make this create to do button working. So this needs to like go to a new page where we'll have a form so that we can fill the to-do details, and after filling those details we should be redirected to this page again with the new to-do created already. Okay, so this firstly I need to like go to a new page, a new route. Okay, so for that what can I do now? If I say that so basically in Next.js we can like go to a new route or a new page using like navigation, so next router. So what I am going to do is I'm going to in this button I'm going to write like on click, and on click I can like navigate or whatever I want to do to another page. Okay, so let me save this and see. it has shown the loading for like some time, and then it threw an error saying that event handlers cannot be passed to a client component props. So basically what they're trying to say is like this component is a server side component because this is an async component, and async components cannot have on click functions or like this or like that. So what we can do, because there are two ways. One, either like from any kind of server function like that we can use navigation here as well, but here we cannot do that. Here we have to go on another route only when we click on something, so we need to make sure of that. So what can we do in that case? So what we need to do is basically we need to create that component which has interactivity as a separate component, and it needs to be a client component. So now this component is a server component and its children, this basically can be a client component. Alright, but make sure that you shouldn't do it the other way around, because it should never be the case that your parent component is a client component and your child component is a server component. So we shouldn't do that, because then eventually that child component is also going to be included in the client bundle. So it will never be, it will be for the sake that it is a server component and we will be able to run all the server methods inside it, but it will be included in client bundle which will be available on client side, so it can cause a lot of security issues. So we have to make sure of that. So server client component inside of server components are fine, but we shouldn't have like a parent client component and a child server component which has like all the security keys or any private API keys or calls that we shouldn't be calling or making on a client side. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, I am going to create a folder named components on the root. So I'm going to name it components. Okay, inside it I'm going to create a button. Okay, so in Next.js we follow this convention for the files like .js, not JSX, and the naming also doesn't have to start with like the first letter capital. Okay, so here inside the button the first thing I'm going to use is use client, because this would be a client side component. Then this component should be named as button. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some props. The first thing I want to know is that which path like you want to redirect this button to, like it could be used as a navigation button, and the second thing I want to know is what needs to be the title of the button. Okay, now I'm just going to return a button like this, and I'm going to pass the title inside it, and I'm going to pass an on click function. And in Next.js we have a use router hook, so basically I'm going to use that use router hook from next router, and I need to push that path, whatever the path has been passed as prop to this function. Okay, so I think that was pretty much it. Now I am going to go back to my to-do page, and instead of this button I'm going to use a child component. Okay, so this is going to be the button from components, and its title needs to be create to-dos, create to-do, and the path needs to be like /new. Okay, let me save this. Okay, now what I want, like I want the path for that. One second, there is another switch to client rendering because the server rendering errored. So I think I did a mistake. Basically if I go to the button component, I am importing the router from next router, but it needs to be imported from next navigation. Okay, so from this I was using the wrong import. Okay, now you can see that it works perfectly fine. Okay, now if I click on create to do, it is going to /new, so which is like not currently defined route, but Actually I don't want it to go to slash to do slash new. I want it to I don't want it to go to slash new. I want it to go to slash to do slash new. Okay, so it's going to be this this route is going to be inside this to do's folder only, because otherwise I would have to like create a folder outside of to do's, but now I want this route to be inside it only. So what I'm going to do is, inside to do's folder I'm going to create another folder which is going to be new. Okay, now I'm going to create a file inside it which is page.js. okay, like this, and then I'm going to create like the basic component structure for it. So I'm going to name the component as new to do. Okay, and let me save this. So one thing I want you guys to know, that I want to make this component as a client component. Okay, now this component is going to be client component. Why? Because it has inputs, it has buttons, it has a lot of interactivity, and I definitely want this component to be a client side component. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a div, and inside this I want to have like a h1 tag saying like create new to do. Okay, like that, and let me pass some of the class names to it. So class names could be text 3xl and font extra bold. Okay, for now let me save this and see that if I'm able to see this page correctly or not. So let me refresh this and click on create to do. Okay, I think I haven't updated the path in there, so the path needs to be slash to do's slash new. So let me save this, let me go back, okay, so you guys can see now it has been redirected to the path slash to do slash new, and I'm able to see this title which is create new to do. But one thing to remember is that it is by default getting the layout of the parent. So basically that's what it happens like that. So inside the to do's folder we had this layout which has this card and background green, like that. So this layout is also like by default taken by every single children inside it. So now basically, since we have a new folder which is going to be a new route, so this is a new route, so this new route is also going to take the same layout which is, and it could also have like its own layout, so which is going to come like again after the parent layout. So it's like that, but I do not need to define any separate route for this. So I'm just going to use the default parent route layout. Okay, so now I'm just quickly going to create a very simple form. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the form tag. Okay, and I want to have the form to be like flex column, and I want like a lot of margin from the top. Now I'm going to create an input which I'm going to have a name. I'm going to give a name to it which is going to be title, and a placeholder named enter title. Okay, next thing is going to be text area, which like it's going to be the description of that to do. So it needs to be like a bigger kind of input. So I'm just going to give it a class name of h24, so it should take like more area. I'm going to give the name to it like as description, and I'm going to give the placeholder as like enter description. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a button after that. Okay, and since this is a client-side component, I do not need to worry about the click events. It's everything is going to be there. So its title needs to be, I can say like just create is going to be fine, and I think that's pretty much it. Let me save this, and we can see that these inputs are not looking very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to also give like default styling to every single input in the app, so that I do not have to worry about the stylings of input all the time. Let me save this, and I'm going to go to globals.css. I am going to write some default stylings for inputs and text area, and I'm going to write the styling like this. So I want, very basic simple styling. So I'm going to save this. So now you can see that the form has been updated. So it's very simple. We are going to collect a title, we are going to collect a description, and we are going to create the to-do and redirect the user back to list of to-dos. Okay, now basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another action to create to-do. So earlier we had created a data folder inside which we created all the fetch methods, anything we want to fetch from the server. So I'm going to create another folder in which I will write all the actions, like creating, deleting, editing. So it doesn't really matter. I could have put this get to do's inside actions only, so it doesn't matter. You can do anything that you want. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another folder named actions. Okay, inside actions, what I'm going to do is I am going to create a new method. It could be create, to do, anything that we want, right? So I'm going to name this function as create to do .js. Okay, so inside it, firstly I'm going to write use server, and then create to do a function, async function, and I expect from the calling component to send a payload to me, which will contain all the details about the to do. And firstly, let me export default create to do. Okay, like that. Now I expect that the payload should have a title and description. Okay, so it could be title and description. Okay, two things I expect from the payload. Now I'm going to create a body by myself, and I want few things to be there. So I want firstly an ID. Every to do should have an ID. So we can use any packages like UUID as well, whatever suits, but for now, to save the time, I'm going to use any math.random number. So I want any random number from 0 to 1000. Okay, so I am going to do math.random, and to get the value till 1000 I have to multiply it by 1000, and to get a proper integer value I also have to do math.floor or ceil. So I have to do this, and I'm going to get a random number. Okay, that is going to be the ID of to do, then the title as it is, then the description as it is, then a timestamp. So the timestamp needs to be the current date, so it will be the new date. Okay, so basically I have created my body like this, and now I have to insert this into the already stored already stored to-dos inside the cookies. Again, I'm going to initiate a variable named cookie promise. I'm going to use the cookies which is imported from next headers. Okay, now I'm going to create a variable name all to dos. Okay, all to dos cookie promise dot get to dos. Okay, like that. Now basically I'm going to create a new variable for the to-dos which will be updated after inserting the new to-do. So I'm going to name that as new to-dos, and which will be all to-dos. Means I've already told you guys that the to-dos have the value inside it. So if I get a value, which means if all to-dos have a value, then I'm going to use all to do's dot values dot value. Otherwise I firstly want it as an empty array. So this empty array will be the condition when we create the first to do, because that time all to do's will not have any value, right? So that time this will be an empty array. But for the second time the all to do's will already have a value, so we have to use that. But it's also the case that we can only store strings in cookies, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stringify the list of array list of to-dos. Okay, so this I'm going to imagine that this list is already stringified. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to parse it. I'm going to parse the to-dos which are already stored like this. Okay, and this is what I'm going to be storing in new to-dos. Alright, now see, my new to-dos variable is declared. Now basically what I need to do is I'm going to update the new to-dos. So new to-dos is going to be what are the to-dos that are already present. It could be empty array as well. Alright, and I'm going to insert the newly created to-do which I have stored in body inside it. Alright, so that is done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this new to-dos in cookie promise. So in cookies, so I'm going to set it, the name of the variable is to-dos, and I'm going to stringify it. So json.stringify what new to-dos. So I hope it's clear. Now I'm going then what I'm going to do is I'm going to redirect back to my /to-dos. So I'm going to redirect to /to-dos like this. Okay, but before redirecting I also want to do one thing, which is revalidating. So what happens in Next.js, it has like default caching. So currently I'm storing things in cookies, so it wouldn't make much difference, but when we have to make actual database calls, that time the caching can be like really problematic. So that time when we revalidate a path, it means that we are refetching every single thing on that page or every single call on that page again. So basically we can revalidate the path. So I also want to do that. So I'm going to revalidate path, which we can import from next cache, and we have to give it a path which is going to be /to-dos. Okay, so let me save it. So I think our create method is completed. Now we also have to do one more thing, that while fetching the to-dos as well, I cannot just send these value like this, because this value will be stored as like stringified version, right? So I need to parse it here as well. So I'm going to do json.parse of this like this. Okay, and now it will be parsed array. Okay, so my create method is done. I am going to go back to my new to-do page, okay, which is this one where I created this form input text area, and now I'm going to connect this form to that create server function. Okay, so what I'm going to do is now I'm going to use a hook from React, which is use action state. So basically I'm going to import a hook from React, which is use action state. Now because Next.js uses React 19 RC version by default, so this hook is available, but if you go to React's official 18th version, this hook wouldn't be available. So basically you can only use this hook in like Next.js 15 official version for now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this hook. So if you guys are not aware about the functioning and working of this hook, I've already made another video on it, so I'm going to attach that video in the card. So I would really recommend go check this out, because this is really helpful when we are dealing with forms and making actions. So this makes our work and job really easy of storing the states and passing the state. We do not have to create like bunch of different states just to store a lot of values. So now basically this hook returns the state, and this hook returns submit action. Like we can name it anything. I'm using underscore here because I do not want to store any state in here, because like I can do like validation. I can do like title has to be more than 4 characters, description has to be less than 500, so something I can do the validation. But for now I'm not going to do any validation in here. So basically I do not want to store anything in the state, like any error or success state, so that's why I'm not going to use this thing. Second is the submit action, and third is loading. So basically I can show a loading state, that's something I can do. So what I'm gonna do is, when this is loading, okay, then I will show like creating, okay, otherwise I'll show create. Okay, that's something I can do for now. Now, as we already know that here we need to pass the actual implementation of submit action, that what we actually want to do at that time. Okay, so I'm going to make an async function which is going to give me my previous state, which I can say x state, and the form data which it has collected from the form. Okay, now the title is going to be form data dot get title, and the description is going to be form data dot get description. Okay, now I'm going to now I'm going to basically create the to do. So I'm going to call the create to do. Okay, so this is like the we have to import this function from actions create to do, and inside this I need to pass a payload which we just created. So payload needs to have a title and a description, so like this. Alright, one more thing, this action, basically how would we know that we need to trigger this action? So we need to pass this action in the form. So this form needs to have action which is submit action, and wait a second, okay, and this button needs to be a submit button, because on clicking of this button I need to trigger that action. Okay, so this is probably done. One thing we need to remember is that right now I'm not adding any validation, so we need to add things properly in here for now. Okay, so I feel that this should actually create a new to do for me, alright, and store it in the cookies. So now I'm going to let me refresh this once. Okay, and let me type like fetch coffee, and I'm going to type the restriction to description, do not forget at 10 a.m. Something like that. Okay, now I'm going to hit create, and as you saw that it showed creating for some time, so the loading state was working fine. And now when we are redirected to /to-dos, even though we are not seeing this empty state which is no to-dos created, which means this to-dos has something stored, right? Since we are consoling the to-dos, so let me open the terminal once and see that if anything is consoled in there or not. So basically if you see that, this has consoled on the server side. Basically why? Because I am consoling it inside this get to-dos method, and see the list of to-dos, it has a name of that cookie storage is to-dos, and the value is basically a list which is stringified. So later we are parsing it. So this stringified list has an ID which is a random number, it has a title, and it has a description, it has a timestamp exactly. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the list of to-dos in here. Okay, so I'm just going to do some basic stylings, and I'm going to make a list. So now let's start. Like in else I'm showing null, but now I don't want to show null, I want to show something. So firstly I will use like React fragment, and I will show like a divider kind of thing. Okay, so I'm going to use a job, then whatever the to-dos I have, Okay, I'm going to map those to-dos. Okay, and I'm going to get like an individual to-do, and I'm going to return like a div. Okay, and since we have an ID with every single to-do, I'm going to give it a key as todo.id, and I'm going to give the class name. I want, like, for every single to-do I want like it to be background primary, I want it to be relative, I want text white, width full, a minimum height, rounded, and margin top, shadow. I want text to be left aligned. I want some kind of padding from top to bottom. And what else? I think that's pretty much it. I want some padding from left right as well, like a lot of padding from left right, so like this. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write like a title, so h4 is fine for that, and the title is stored in todo.title we just saw, and the class name needs to be bold font, and it could be like large text. Okay, then below that I'm going to show the description in p tag, so it will be like todo.description. Okay, then on I think firstly I'm going to show that I also want to show date, like I want to show date as like in absolute to the very left. So here I'm going to create like a date. Okay, so I'm going to create like a div here, and this div can be like have small text. First of all, it can have low opacity. I want the font to be extra bold, and I want the background to be white, and I want text center. It needs to be a flex item center, and I want text to be little grayish, could be 90, and height, small height, and small width. Okay, like this, and it needs to be rounded as well, absolute. So the first thing I want it to be always show on the left side, and it could be like from the top 10 pixels and left 2 and justify center 2, because I want it to come in the very center. Alright, that was like a long class names. Now inside this div I want to show p tag, and then I want to show the date. To show the date, I am going to use the Intel constructor, which comes by default in JavaScript, and here I want to use the datetime format function inside it, and I want to format the date with engb. Okay, and I'm going to define, I want to use the day in 2 digits and the month as like short. Okay, and what I'm going to format is new date of what I've stored in the to do, which is to do dot timestamp. Okay, I think I have done it properly. Let me save this if nothing breaks. Alright, I think it looks good. But now, did you notice one thing? There is no way for me to create a new to-do when we have the to-dos available. So I need to show some kind of create button in here as well, so that I can create new to-dos. So for that, what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to show a create button on the right side of my to-dos here when we have to-dos available already. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this thing, like I'm going to make this div as relative, and I'm going to show like an absolute button in here. Okay, so now here after h1 what I'm going to do is that if we have to-dos dot length, that if there are to-dos, then I'm going to show a div else null. Let's do that as well. This div needs to be like absolute first of all, and then like it needs to be in extreme right, so I'm going to give it a right of 2 and top of 1, that only. And I'm going to use the same button which we have in here. I'm just going to copy this and paste it here like this. Okay, let me save this, and you can see that this button is coming here as well. So now what we can do is when we have list of to-dos already there, then as well we can create the to-dos with this button. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to create a new to-do again, like have dinner. Let me copy some kind of dummy text because I want to test with something like which comes all over the place. So let me have like this much. Okay, now let me put this description here and create. Alright, so I think it looks perfectly fine to me. So we can also see in the terminal now we have two to-dos which are stored. One has the ID 768 and there is another one which has the ID 692, so which are basically random numbers. So I think this works perfectly fine. Now we are going to add the next functionality, next feature basically, which is going to be the delete part. That we have created the to-dos, but now we are done with it, so we should be able to delete the to-dos, right? So I want to create a delete action on the server side, so I'm going to go inside actions and I'm going to create a new like function which needs to be delete todo.js. Alright, so I'm going to create a function named delete todo anything function, and I expect to get the ID of to do inside this function as an argument. And firstly I am going to export default delete to do, and let me say this. Alright, now what we're going to do is firstly we are going to do the same old fetch the cookies. Okay, next same old we are going to, so let me copy this thing from create to do only. So basically I want the new to-dos part, so I want this 2 lines. So what I'm basically expecting here is that I'm fetching the all to-dos inside the cookies with the name to-dos, and then here basically this is nothing related to new to-dos, but basically I'm parsing the to-dos if they are there. If we don't have any to-dos, then we are just making like I'm making the empty list. Now I'm going to update the new to-dos. So new to-dos is going to be new to-dos dot filter. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use the filter method to remove one of the to-dos from the list. So what I want is I want to filter the to-do which has the ID not equal to the ID coming as the argument. So this will basically remove that particular to-do from the list. Okay, so then same old, I'm going to set the cookie as again to-dos as json.stringify new to-dos, because I can only store like stringified version of it. Again, since I'm going to be deleting on this URL only, so I do not need to redirect to anywhere, but again I want to revalidate this path. So I'm going to revalidating this path which is going to be slash to-dos. Okay, alright, so I think this was pretty simple. I've created a method to delete as well. Now I'm just going to attach it on the component, which is here, page.js inside slash to-dos. Okay, now I'm going to create a delete button. So what I'm going to do here is, like inside this particular to-do card only, I'm going to create another absolute item on the very right of it, that is going to be a delete icon. Okay, now I'm going to create a div, which is again going to be like an absolute div. Firstly, it's going to be absolute. I'm going to give it like right 4. I'm going to give height full because I want to make the icon centered. I'm going to make it grid and place item center, which is a good trick to make the item center, and top 0. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, again I'm going to create something like a button which needs to delete the to-do. But now we know that we cannot have like interactivity on the server component, and this is a server component. So basically, even if I create a button, I need to add that interactivity to it, add that on click to it. So that I need to do in a separate component, which needs to be a client component. So basically what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create another component inside components. Okay, so which is going to handle the delete interactivity. So in the name of the file is going to be delete button.js. so this is the component name convention which Next.js suggests, small case with hyphen connected, and I will name it delete button. Okay, now what we are going to put inside delete button is, we expect that we already have the ID of that to do, because I don't want to keep the logic in the parent component. So I'm going to get the ID of that component as like prop. Okay, and I'm going to return like what I'm going to do is, I'm going to return an image tag. Okay, and here I'm going to put a source to it, and this source basically I have copied from one of the Google images. So I'm going to put the source as one of the Google images, and its width is going to be 30 and height can also be like 30. And what's going to happen on click, so that is the main thing. And I'm going to call a function which I just created, which is delete to do, and I'm directly going to pass the ID. Alright, so I think that was pretty much it. It was simple. I'm going to go back to my page.js, and here I need to call that delete button and pass the ID as todo.id. Alright, let me save this, and it says that event handler cannot be passed to a client component props. Okay, so basically if I go to the delete button, I have not declared any use client directive here. So by default every component in Next.js is a server component, so I basically need to tell Next.js that this is a client side component. So I'm going to declare use client here. Let me save this, and it says that there is another error. You are importing a component that needs next headers that only works in a server component, which is not supported in the pages directory. Okay, let me rerun the server. Actually, I found the issue. The issue is that I'm using a wrong directive here. It needs to be use server, not user server. So let me save this, and you can see now everything works fine, and we can also see like a delete button on the right side of it. Okay, so it will look better if it will be like cursor pointer. So let me give that class name to it. Okay, let me save this, and now as we can see, one second, something is wrong. No, everything looks good. Okay, don't worry about it. So basically now I think we can also delete the to-dos. Okay, so let me create another one of the to-dos, and see if we can delete that new to do properly. So like random to do, and I'm going to again copy some of the gibberish and paste it here. Okay, let me create. Okay, so now this is a really long one and I am going to delete it. So I'm going to like try for the first time, and yeah, I think it worked properly. And now if we can see the console, the to-dos, firstly it was like this one, and after this you see that, you know, basically it has revalidated it, and after that we are only seeing 2 to-dos. Okay, so now basically I feel that everything works perfectly fine, so I'm going to like test this from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I go to localhost 3000. Okay, so basically our slash route is not like looking really nice. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some like very random and basic styles to it. So I'm going to go inside the page, which is the main one, and I'm going to remove this one, and I'm going to add like the class name. I want to take it to take the full screen. I want to take the width of screen 2, and I want the background to be primary. I want the grid, and I want to place the items center. Okay, that's what I want, but here I want a button, exactly that one, and I want the title as like launch app. Okay, LAUNCH, and I want the path, and it will take us to my to-dos. Okay, so the path needs to be to-dos. So let me format it, and this like the button is green as well, so it's not visible. Okay, so I think that app is properly completed. So let me make it full screen for you guys to see, and let me refresh it. Now Next.js also have this, you know, thing that it will tell us whether this route is a static route or dynamic route. So dynamic route has like dynamic IDs. For example, a product page can have like /product ID, so that is a dynamic route, but this one is a static route. And I'm going to click on launch app, and it has fetched the list of my to-dos exactly how I want it. I'm going to try creating one again, a random one, and pasting. Okay, I have to take this one and paste it there, create. Okay, so I think that I can create as many to-dos as I want, and after that the delete function works as expected as well. Let me delete every single one of them, this one, and then we are back to our default state where we can create the new to-dos. Alright, so that was pretty much it about this project. I hope you guys have enjoyed and learned a lot. Please let me know if you need the code for this as well. I can provide, but if any other doubt, please let me know. I'll help with that as well. Thank you so much.